I hadn't planned on staying long. She just needed help moving a few boxes, maybe assembling a shelf. That's how she pitched it. A quick favor, my mom had said, texting me her number. Michelle's finally moving into her new place. Be a good nephew, will you? Michelle wasn't really my aunt. Not by blood. She was my mom's closest friend growing up, the one who used to babysit me when I was still afraid of the dark. I hadn't seen her in years, maybe since high school, but I remembered the way she always smelled like vanilla and cedar, the way she spoke in a voice just slightly softer than everyone else's, like she knew secrets no one else did. When I showed up that afternoon, the moving truck was already half unloaded. She greeted me at the door in worn jeans and an oversized linen shirt, sleeves rolled to her elbows, her hair pinned up carelessly with a pencil. She looked different, older, sure, but also exactly the same. Still calm, still effortlessly composed. Look at you, she said, one hand on her hip. All grown up. I smiled. Almost. She laughed. Well, come on in. You're just in time to save my back. The house was small but warm, full of unpacked boxes, paint cans, and sunlight leaking through half-covered windows. We got to work quickly, bookshelves, side tables, 3 trips up the stairs with wardrobe bins. She worked hard, didn't complain once, but I could tell by the end of it that she was tired. Still, she moved like she had something to prove. When we finished assembling the last piece of furniture, a coffee table with a chipped corner she called character, she dropped onto the couch with a soft groan. I sat down across from her on the floor, back against the wall, wiping my hands with a dusty rag. You want to stay for dinner? She asked after a moment. I was just going to heat up something simple, unless you've got plans. I didn't. Sure, I said. Thanks. The kitchen was still half-boxed, but she moved through it like she knew where everything was. I offered to help, but she waved me off. Instead, I stood at the counter and watched her cook. Pasta with olive oil and garlic, a simple salad, 2 glasses of wine. She poured one and slid it across to me. To unexpected helpers, she said. I raised my glass. And unpacked memories. She smiled at that. We ate at the kitchen island, the light dim and golden around us. Conversation was easy, about my classes, her new job at the gallery downtown, how hard it was to find decent movers. There were long pauses that didn't feel awkward, just quiet. After we finished, she rinsed the dishes and said, I haven't set up the TV yet, but I've got my laptop and a bunch of old movies on a flash drive. Want to watch something? It's either that or sorting silverware. I grinned. Movie sounds good. We moved to the living room. She plugged in the laptop, set it on a box between us, and clicked through a few folders. Romance, action, or 90s guilty pleasures? She asked. Surprise me. She smirked. Dangerous. She picked something with a quiet soundtrack and slow pacing. Something nostalgic, though I barely remembered it. We sat a few feet apart on the couch, a shared blanket tossed loosely over our legs. The wine made everything feel softer, slower. I wasn't tired, exactly, but my limbs felt warm and heavy. She kept leaning forward to adjust the volume or skip previews, and every time her shoulder brushed mine. Halfway through the movie, she stood up to get another glass of wine. When she came back, she didn't sit quite as far away. She didn't say anything about it. Neither did I. The movie kept playing, but neither of us was really watching. At least I wasn't. I kept catching myself noticing things. The curve of her knee under the blanket, the way her collarbone moved when she laughed softly at something on screen, the scent of her shampoo drifting every time she shifted. She wasn't that far from me now. Not quite close enough to touch, but closer than you'd expect from someone you hadn't seen in years. And definitely closer than someone who used to babysit you should probably sit. But I didn't move away. I think she noticed, or maybe she didn't care. She sipped her wine slowly, her fingers curled around the stem of the glass, her eyes half focused on the screen. The room was dim, lit only by the laptop's glow and a single lamp across the room. Outside, the wind picked up. Leaves brushed against the windows like soft fingers. "You always this quiet?" she asked suddenly, without looking at me. I glanced at her. "I guess." She turned her head just slightly, the side of her mouth curling into a faint smile. "You used to talk a lot more when you were 10. I also used to believe in the tooth fairy," I said. She laughed, a low, warm sound, and looked back at the screen. "Fair enough." A few more minutes passed in silence. Then she shifted, pulling the blanket higher over her legs, and her knee brushed mine under the fabric. Lightly, barely, but she didn't move it away. Neither did I. I stared at the screen, trying to follow the plot, but it all blurred together. My heart was thudding quietly in my chest. I wondered if she could hear it. She set her wine glass down on the box in front of us, then leaned back into the couch more fully, pulling the blanket up over both of us without a word. She didn't ask. She just did it. And then she sighed. Not tired, more like content. "You know," she said softly, "it's weird how people come back into your life when you least expect them." I didn't respond at first. I wasn't sure what to say. "Yeah," I said finally. "It is." She turned her head, looking at me now. Her eyes searched mine. Not in a flirty way, in a thoughtful one, like she was trying to decide something. "I wasn't sure what to expect when you showed up today," she said. "You're not a kid anymore." There it was again. That line. That recognition. I swallowed. "Neither are you." She blinked once, surprised, then smiled. A slow, genuine thing that crept into her eyes and stayed there. "That's true," she said. We sat there, not speaking, the movie continuing quietly in front of us. My leg was still pressed lightly against hers under the blanket. Her arm was close now, maybe just an inch away from mine. The air between us felt different. Not charged exactly, but aware. Like we were both suddenly listening for something that hadn't been said yet. She reached up to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, then let her hand drop gently between us. Her fingers rested on the couch cushion, close enough to mine that I could feel the warmth. I didn't touch her, but I didn't move either. We stayed like that until the credits rolled. She didn't move to turn it off. Instead, she looked at me again. Slower this time, more deliberate. The room was still. The only sound the soft hum of the laptop's fan and the occasional creak of the old house settling around us. Then she said, voice barely above a whisper, "I like this." I tilted my head. "What do you mean?" "This. The quiet. The company." She looked down at her hand for a moment, then back at me. "I don't get this kind of night very often anymore." I didn't know what made me do it. The wine, the warmth, the way she was looking at me. But I turned my hand over, slowly, just enough for my fingers to brush hers. She didn't flinch. Instead, her pinky curled slightly, hooking around mine. Barely a touch, barely anything, but it was something. A quiet, wordless something that settled into the room and refused to leave. The credits faded, and the screen went dark, leaving only the lamp's amber light flickering across her face. She didn't move to close the laptop. Neither did I. We just sat there, still quiet, aware. Her pinky still rested lightly against mine. Neither of us acknowledged it. She exhaled, soft and slow, like she'd been holding her breath through the entire film. Then she stood. "I'll grab some water," she said, almost too casually. "You want anything?" I shook my head. She disappeared into the kitchen, leaving me in the quiet thrum of the moment. My fingers still tingled where they had touched hers. I leaned back into the couch and stared up at the ceiling, trying to process what this night had turned into and how it had gotten here. When she returned, she wasn't holding water. She had another glass of wine, her own still half full. She sat down again, but not where she had been before. She sat right beside me. No space between us now. Her bare arm brushed mine as she settled back under the blanket. She didn't speak, just took a small sip, then handed me the glass, letting her fingers linger on mine a second longer than they needed to. I drank more out of instinct than thirst, then passed it back. And still, she didn't look at me. She looked straight ahead at the blank screen. Then, finally, softly, she said, "You know what's strange?" "What?" "How long we've been pretending this is nothing." My chest tightened. I didn't speak. She glanced at me then, just barely, her eyes moving to mine like she wasn't sure she'd finish what she wanted to say. But she did. She shifted under the blanket, turning slightly toward me, and then she moved closer, her hip against mine, her shoulder brushing my upper arm, her knee lightly pressing against my leg. No more pretense, no more invisible line. Then, in a voice so low I could barely hear it, she leaned in and whispered, "Tell me you've thought about it too." The room held its breath. I looked at her, really looked. Her face was calm, but her eyes were searching, waiting. She wasn't teasing. She wasn't playing. She was asking. She wanted to know if she was alone in this. And she wasn't. I swallowed. My voice caught in my throat before I could speak. But when I did, it came out steady. "Yes," I said. She closed her eyes for a moment. Not in regret, in relief. When she opened them again, there was something different there. Not shock, not shame, certainty. Still looking at me, she said, "I wasn't going to say anything. I thought maybe I imagined it. But tonight," she didn't finish. She didn't have to. Her hand, resting between us on the blanket, slid just slightly to the side until her fingers touched my thigh. Lightly, no pressure, just presence. "I know I shouldn't feel this," she said. "I know," I whispered. We sat in silence, the air thick with everything we couldn't say or didn't dare to. The soft whir of the laptop fan had long since faded. The house around us creaked in the wind, unaware, or maybe complicit. "I didn't mean for this to happen," she said. "Neither did I. But it did." I nodded. Her hand moved, not away, forward, slowly, resting now fully on my leg, her thumb brushing a faint, barely there arc. It wasn't seductive. It was intimate, real. "You're not a kid anymore," she said. I met her eyes. "No," I said. "I'm not." The blanket was still over us, warm and heavy. Our bodies had no space left between them. Her face was inches from mine now. Her lips parted slightly, but she didn't close the gap. Instead, she said, quietly, "So what happens now?" I didn't have the answer, but I knew I didn't want to move away. So I didn't. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because anything happened. Not in the way some people might expect. We didn't cross some line with gasping breaths or whispered promises under the blanket. We just sat there, together, her hand resting on mine, our legs touching, our thoughts louder than any movie soundtrack could ever be. Eventually, she stood, slow, careful, and said she was going to bed. But before she turned to go, she paused, looked back at me. Her eyes were soft, uncertain, and still. "I'm glad you stayed," she said. "I'm glad you asked." She nodded, the corners of her mouth pulling into a small, private smile. And then she disappeared down the hallway, her footsteps barely audible against the hardwood floor. I stayed on the couch for a while, the blanket still warm around me, the laptop screen long since dark. I watched the ceiling, listened to the creaks of the house, and replayed her words. Tell me you've thought about it too. Over and over, like a song stuck in my chest. When I finally drifted to sleep, it was shallow, restless. The morning came quietly. Sunlight pooled across the floor in gold ribbons. Somewhere outside, a bird chirped. Inside, the house was still, except for the distant sound of a kettle heating. I rubbed my eyes and sat up slowly. My neck ached. My mind felt foggy. But the memory of last night came rushing back, clear and vivid and warm. I walked barefoot toward the kitchen. She was already there, wearing a soft robe loosely tied. Her hair was up again, but lazily, with strands falling around her face. She was pouring tea into 2 mugs and didn't jump when she saw me. Just smiled. "Morning." "Hey," I said. She slid one of the mugs toward me. "Chamomile," she said. "You seemed like the type." I took it, fingers brushing hers. "You're right." She leaned against the counter, sipping hers. The silence between us wasn't awkward now. It was shared, mutual, grounded. We didn't talk about the night directly. Not at first. We just stood there, slowly waking, eyes half-lidded from sleep and nerves. The tea was hot, fragrant, the kind of quiet that doesn't need filling stretched around us like a blanket. Then she said it. "I didn't plan any of that." "I know. I didn't expect you to say yes." I looked at her. "Neither did I." She smiled faintly, then glanced down at her mug. "I've been alone in this house for a long time, even when people were around. I guess I forgot how easy it is to feel something when someone sees you." I nodded. "You're not the only one who felt it." Her eyes met mine again, and something passed between us. Something less electric now, more real, settled, certain. "I don't want to mess things up," she said. "Not yours, not mine." "I'm not looking to ruin anything," I replied. "But I'm not pretending anymore either." She inhaled, slow and full, then exhaled. "That's fair." The tea cooled in our hands. The world outside warmed. Somewhere in another timeline, maybe this morning didn't happen. Maybe the night before was forgotten, labeled a fluke, buried under polite distance and forced small talk. But not here, not with us. We finished our tea and stood by the kitchen window side by side. No dramatic ending, no final line, just shared silence and soft glances. And when I finally turned to go, to grab my things to start the rest of the day, she stopped me with a single touch to my wrist. "I meant what I said," she murmured. "I'm glad you stayed." I nodded. "So am I." And then, just before I stepped out of the room, she added quietly, just loud enough for me to hear, "Maybe next time we don't stop at almost."